Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Bruja podcast with me, Tamar, and our co-host, Vondechii, is here. And today, actually, we're going to be talking about kitchen magic or kitchen witches, which, Vondechii, you have a lot of information about this because I didn't realize that existed until you told me that. And I was like, oh, snap.
Yes, there is. Okay, so there's different types of witches. I definitely did a video on it, but of course, it did not cover all of the existing witches of the world. But one of the witches that I did cover was the kitchen witch. And I feel like the kitchen witch is one of the most imperative witches just due to the fact that they deal with herbs and different spices.
Mhm.
And, there's magical properties behind different herbs and different spices. And also, being a kitchen witch, I feel like a lot of the times when we embark on a spiritual journey, we tend to spend money, for example, buying a dream journal or buying a, sage or rose quartz or different types of spiritual instruments to help us in our journey. And I feel
Right.
like with the kitchen witch, you don't necessarily have to buy anything because you already have everything in your kitchen.
Mhm.
If you have a well stocked or well equipped kitchen.
Right.
So yeah. So that's
But
why
even then you have instruments because I was looking at some of your notes that you sent, and there was something that you mentioned in terms of a wooden spoon. And I remember when I was cleaning out my mom's apartment, she had these bamboo utensils, like, stirs and that kind of thing. And like that was set for me. Like she was like, you're gonna have, like, this is for you. So when I was cleaning out the apartment, I was like, I need these. And like whenever I'm in the kitchen, that's my instrument that I use. Like that's like my little like wand to stir anything that I'm doing. And when I was reading the notes, I was like, oh my God, of course. Like that makes sense. And I was excited to talk to you about this because the other day I was thinking, and I was actually talking to someone about this. Um, where I come from, like the part in Honduras that my mom is from, is along the coast. So she's from a place that is called Puerto Cortes. So it's a port where a lot of ships come in. And from there, you have access to the islands of Honduras. And in our family, we tend to use a lot of coconut milk in a lot of the things that we make. And so I was thinking about that when I was thinking about kitchen witches, because I was thinking about the fact that lately I've been feeling called to like do or try recipes that relate with my ancestors. And coconut milk is something that's very specific to us. Like we make rice in coconut milk. We make beans in coconut milk. We have a soup that's known as sopa de caracol, which is basically a conch soup. It's like the sea snail, but we
Mhm.
use coconut milk for that. So I was thinking about that in terms of how it relates to my spiritual practice, because whenever I'm in the kitchen, I always feel my mother near me. And I'm always like stirring and like, putting like incantations and blessings in my teas and everything. So I was like, oh my God, like, am I doing kitchen magic? I was
Yes,
like, let me tell Vondechii.
that's awesome. And also, if she used to play like my grandmother used to listen to Marco Antonio Solis and Gilberto Rosa
Girl.
and Marco Antonio. Like, oh my God. So every time when I'm cooking, like, let's say if I'm making some paella for Adam, or if I'm making some pão de queijo, I like to listen to certain songs because it puts me in a mood, you know
Oh,
what I'm saying?
wait, what's that? What's that second thing that you mentioned?
Pão
What
de
I
queijo.
never heard of that. Yeah.
Pão de queijo is like cheesy bread,
Oh, I never heard of that.
like pan de queso, but pão de queijo.
Oh, okay. Okay. I never heard it. I never heard that name. So like I'm always like, anytime I hear like a new thing, I'm just like, what is it? What is
It's
that?
really good. And usually if like my grandmother, my mother, they're legit, they would make it from scratch. You can go to Whole Foods and order bungee, or not order, but have bungee queijo. It's on the frozen section. And
Mm.
it's like a little bag like this, and it's like cheesy bread. It is so good. Just pop them in the oven for 20 minutes. They come out, it's crujiente, it's soft on
Oh,
the inside, and it's not filled with cheese. Like, no, it's just the bread
yeah.
is mixed with a little bit of cheese. So it's fluffy and like it's not
Got
like
a good balance.
no,
Oh, that sounds so good.
it's just like cheese bread. Like it's really good and it's crunchy. Oh, it's so good.
That
So
sounds.
music is so dope to listen to when you're making food.
Mhm.
Um, I would also say using, like you said, the different kitchen instruments. There's salt shakers that certain people use. For example, there's certain pots, certain pans that are made for certain dishes and only for certain dishes.
Mm.
Um, for example, using, I would say, I don't want to keep talking about like herbs and spices, because you could buy spices and you can buy herbs too, but you can actually create, not create, but plant your own vegetables and plant your own herbs and spices. But that's creating a type of magic. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not only you having a green thumb, but that's you creating your own nutrition, your own, like when you make food, there's something sacred about that. Like within every person in this world eats food, whether it's
Right.
liquefied or not. You eat food, and it brings everybody to the table. It gives you a sense of not humility but fun, and like that sparkle and that crackle in the air. And like, what are you cooking? Is it crunchy? Is it soft? Is it tangy? And then after you eat, like, because we're Latina, you have sobremesa, so there is
Mhm.
like a certain custom to eating. And if we could, if we can intertwine that sacredness with food, and not only as it's healing and nurturing ourselves, but for us to manifest our magic, that's
Yes.
beautiful. Also, in regards to kitchen witches, is not only about the food but the aesthetic of how you present your food, the feng shui
Mhm.
of how do you prepare your table. Is it a romantic dinner? So let's have some candles on that, romantic dinner. What type of candles? What color candles are you using? Like this
True.
this it's like a matrix, it's like a helix that just interweaves itself to so many things. And that's why I feel like, um having a life, not only lifestyle, but like your home decor is so important. It says so much about you. It's not only the characteristic of your household, but it's also, it's a statement, it's a bold statement about yourself. So, not to say you're a different type of witch if you have a glass table versus a wooden table, but if you add a certain type of charm to your table, a certain type of, let's say, coasters, table centerpieces, things of that nature, it either creates your home, it makes it more homey or more distant, it makes it more warm or more cold, it makes it more inviting or more, you know, not inviting, I guess.
No, like I definitely like I see what you're saying because like I often think of I'm very much into like interior design and aesthetics, and even just thinking about like the difference between wood and glass and like what it says about you as a witch, where like some people like more warmth, and there's nothing wrong with that, and some people like glass where they can really see things crystal clear,
And like to clean
things
and
reflect off of each other. So like I like that. I like that. And one thing that I was thinking of too with like being a kitchen witch is I feel like there's a lesson too when you're cooking about patience. And when I think of cooking and like herbs, it's very earth magic to me, which is all about practicality, all about patience, learning to plant the seeds and let things grow in their time. Like I tend to do a lot of fire magic because it's quick and it's instantaneous, but earth magic.
it sounds like you're describing zodiac signs, like earth signs and fire signs. Earth signs
Very
like
much
practical.
so. It's very much so. Like that's where, when it comes to the zodiac elements, you get that from when you think about the elements and how they work. And like when I'm thinking about making a recipe, there is patience required. You have to prep. When you're prepping, you want to be intentional about it. When you're putting the ingredients in, you want to be intentional about it. Even when you're washing your hands, when you're gonna like touching one thing to another, like there's an intention to it and there's a time that it takes because you can't rush good food.
And you can
Absolutely
taste
cannot.
the love. And then also with kitchen magic, I like the way you say fire because I'm a fire sign Sag. Woo woo. We're very impatient as
Yes.
fuck. But there's a difference between baking and cooking. With cooking, I don't really have to look at a recipe. I can just to my taste. I can, make certain things. With baking, you really have to stick to the amount of yeast you're supposed to be using, the baking soda that you're supposed to be using, the baking powder you're supposed to be using. So not only is it, creating something beautiful and something that bonds people and brings people together and nourishes you, but there
Mm.
is some type of, like, you need to focus. In a sense, you need to not only like, oh, meditate, no, like you need to focus, you need to
Be present.
be present, be
Yeah.
there, be wary some about what's happening, what's going on. And then usually it's kind of like, if you are accustomed to a certain recipe and you know how to manipulate it, you can actually personalize it to your own liking, and it might come out a little bit better than, the generic, generalizable recipe. Same thing with
Mhm.
magic. Same thing with
Yes.
spells.
Yes. I was actually thinking about that the other day because somebody had asked me, I think I had made a post, and this was my first time ever hearing this term. I don't know if you've heard this term, chaos magic. Have you ever heard about that?
No, but I feel like I can gauge what it is.
So like someone asked me about that, and I like at first, because I heard the word chaos, I was like, oh my God, like that sounds horrible. But as far as my understanding of it, it's where and it's like a very general thing, but it relates to what you're saying, where basically you don't follow a set guideline with your magic. It depends on the circumstances and it can change. And I often thought, I was just like, that's often what I do when I'm doing spells. It's never the same because each day there's new opportunities. I a lot of times do spells in accordance with the stars, and that always changes. And so I'm thinking about that when it comes to food because you can have a recipe, but once you know it and you know what it is you're going for, you can do those little tweaks and you can adjust. If you want it a little bit more salty, or you can add a little more salt, you can, you know,
Mm-hmm.
take away from there. And it'll be a new recipe, but it's taken from something that's established, but you're adding your own customizable flair to it. So it makes me think of that.
Just like
Um,
how we didn't make up the terminology Black Brujas, but we kind of made it our, like, we're embracing the intersectionality of it and making
right.
it our own.
Right. Which is also it's a beautiful thing because this is also a conversation I had with somebody where I was like, being black is not a monolith. You know, being black exists in so there's so many ways to
You
be
could be a
black.
Black Brazilian, a Black Panamanian, a Black person from Dubai. You could be a Black Antiguan. You could be a Black English person.
There's so many different things. And there's also even in the aesthetic, like there's so many ways that you can express that. Like I recently ordered because I have a thing, I love door knocker earrings. I love them. I love them, love them, love them, love them. A lot of people, say, oh, it's so urban. And I'm like, I don't care because I was raised in the projects and I will rep that. And I'm okay with that. Like I would be the type to wear door knocker earrings with a business suit.
Okay, I was not raised in the projects. However, I always wanted to dress up like the girls that I saw in the projects, and my mom would never let me. For example,
Girl,
remember those earrings that had your name on it with the hoops?
that's what
My
I
mom
got.
never let me wear. She was like, it's
I
too glamorous
got
for you.
those. That's what I recently ordered. They were the door knocker earrings, and I got my name on it, and then I got Mama Voodoo as well. And I told one of my friends, and he's like, "Oh my God, that's so ghetto." And I'm like, "I
Oh,
know, and I love it.
I love
I
it. Yeah.
love it. I love it." Because it's an aesthetic, and it's like that's the great thing about fashion is you can show off different things. And the thing that I like, I can't stand sometimes when like I'm expressing my blackness and there's a part of me that's going even deeper into a journey of discovering my blackness where
Mm.
it's like some people think, oh, being black means this, and it's like, no, it doesn't. There's so many different ways to be
Right.
black, and
Yeah.
being a black bruja even more. There's so many different ways to be a black bruja. There's like not one aesthetic that fits. It's anything and everything.
There's so many different types of intersectionalities that we can talk about, being Black, being woman, a part of the LGBTQ community. There's just so many things. Um, Coming from a two-parent household, coming from one-parent household, being a Black born, African American born citizen, but you were raised by a family of immigrants. They were still Black, but they're not American, like,
Right.
or
Right.
Caribbean, like.
And it's just like that's also what I love about, us like having this podcast and discussing because being a bruja for us, you being Brazilian, there are, I'm sure, different cultural things in terms of being a bruja, whereas compared to me being Honduran, a lot of different things that
Yeah.
both interweave and are also different
Oh
at
yeah.
the same time, which helps us discover even more about who we are, which
Totally.
adds to that expression of who we are.
Think about it, different geographical dimensions, like geographical locations, so that means different roots that are being grown, different types of foods that are being grown, different types of water, different types of music, different types of language and dialects, different types of exposure to the sun. There's different types of animals and biospheres and species of plants. I guarantee you, like for example, you're accustomed to drinking coconut milk. So I guarantee you, if you can go to a tropical country and drink coconut milk and your intestines won't get fucked up. However, if you bring somebody else, not to say, oh, if you're American, I'm American, not saying that, but if you're American born and you only eat American food and you go to a different country and you decide to drink, oh, some coconut milk from a coconut is a dub.
It's not gonna agree with you.
Exactly. It's not, because you're not accustomed to the cultures that's inside of the food. You're not accustomed to not even like the taste, but just the genetic composition of the food, to the cellular level that the people that are from there are accustomed to.
Right.
So we're very variant.
You mentioned the whole cellular level thing, and it makes me think a lot of, like, in terms of kitchen witch and just being a witch overall, where it's like, I feel like some people think of witches and like they think, all this external stuff. You need all this external instruments and things. And I like to say this right now, especially because I know there are people, especially us young people, some of us don't have it like that. Some of us, we're on a really strict budget. We can't get candles from.
We're broke. We're broke on a budget.
We're broke. Yes, broke on a budget. So sometimes as a bruja, you have to budget. You can't always get the best candles. You can't always get the best essential oils. And I think it's important to understand that on a cellular level, there are ways that you can manifest things and do things where you don't need all that stuff. And we can use kitchen witch as an example. Like, you don't need all the herbs and spices to make a good meal. You can
I'll do one better. You do not need to go to the salon to do your hair, to have a hair mask. You can go and get some azeite, some olive oil, some mayonesa, some, avocado, and you can make your own hair mask. That's a form of kitchen magic. And also it's a form of you utilizing the resources that are given to you, you being strategic, and you budgeting the resources that you're allotted with. And I feel like I feel like it's kind of like school, like, not to say like, oh, if you're smart, you don't have a lot of books around you, but if you know your material, you don't have to read from a book. So if you really into this, into your practice, you won't necessarily need different instruments for you to invoke the intentions or manifest the meanings that you want to manifest.
Yes.
It's kind of like Harry Potter, because I love Harry Potter. Like, if you're really like a Hermione type wizard or witch, you don't even have to talk. You don't have to speak it. It's all, you know what I'm saying?
Got it. She's always had it because she did her due diligence, which is what you have to do as a witch. You always have to be studying. It doesn't mean you have to do it 24/7, but you always need to be on your P's and Q's in terms of what it is that you gravitate to. Like, I gravitate towards candle magic, so I'm always reading about that, always practicing with that as best as I can. We have kitchen witches. You're in the kitchen concocting whatever it is that you need to concoct, So I think those are very important points, just because a lot of people think you have to spend a lot of money on this. And it's like, no, you don't.
Especially if you grow your own fruits and vegetables. And listen, that takes a lot of care, but go get a plastic container or a glass container. And anytime you eat a fruit or something like that, you can Google it or do YouTube like videos, like, what part of the seed do I have to save? Or what part of the plant do I have to save and put in water so it can grow again? That's free.
Yeah. And it's resourceful also. Learning to be resourceful. I think that's a really important quality as a witch to have, because you're not going to always have the instruments that you want or feel that you need. And, you don't want to let that get in the way of your practice. That's just, that's my opinion. My life has sometimes been struggle, so I've had to learn to be resourceful. But I just think it's a great example. What was that?
Sorry, it's called creativity.
Creativity. It is creativity. It is. You have to be creative. And also us being city witches, because we are from the city, we have to be creative, thrifty, figure things out.
And or anything like that to be growing and shit, right? And it's illegal to put anything in your fire escape because it's a fire hazard. So you
Yeah.
really would have to think about maybe making your own shelves on the wall, or yeah.
Right. Right. So yeah. I'm trying to think, is there anything else we wanted to discuss in relation to kitchen witches?
Just to be careful, and also with kitchen witches, you can join a coven, and a coven basically is just like a sisterhood, just like a social network that's created by magical people, witches, wizards. But I would say I feel like kitchen witch is one of those witches that you really don't necessarily need to join a coven. You could just do it on your own whenever you want to, whenever you need to, because we all have to eat. But it's
Right.
one of those things where you don't necessarily need a badge or an entry level. Like there's no gateway. Like you already have the materials. It's just
Right.
doing your homework.
You can definitely go in there. You can start for those that maybe, haven't dabbled or feel that they haven't really crossed that threshold. I feel like you can even start with something like tea, brewing tea. Very, simply, learn the herb that you already know most likely what you're brewing it for if you're doing like chamomile to fall asleep. And even I think how you stir it, right? If you stir,
Up,
what is it? Is it
clockwise,
clockwise?
mouth. Uh-huh.
Clockwise to like, let's say like, you're drinking tea to gain energy. Stirring it clockwise helps with thinking about the intention of the fact that, you want that tea to help you with that. Whereas if you have tea that you want to detox, stirring it counterclockwise to rid yourself of things. And you can definitely do the same thing with stirring, if you got pasta or whatever, whatever the intention is, the
Right.
way that you stir can help.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I often do that when I'm cooking for my friends, like, I want like love and abundance for them. So I'll stir clockwise and
Yeah.
just kind of say a prayer over the meal as I'm cooking it and all of that so that it's, has good juju.
Exactly.
So yeah, okay. So that's good to know that I do kitchen magic, because there are times where I don't know what kind of witch I am and I'm like, I'm just doing whatever
Eclectic
comes to me.
witch for the time being.
Eclectic witch, yes, for the time being. For the time being. Yes, yes. That was our episode for today. Definitely check us out on the next episode of the Bruja podcast, and we'll see you then. Bye.